The holding cell was small but not uncomfortable. It had a bed, a small desk, and a window showing the stars. Una sat on the bed and stared at her hands. These hands that had moved faster than she thought possible. These hands that had broken a Valkyrian commander's mask before he could blink. She didn't understand what had happened. The whole incident felt like a dream. She remembered Velnath's hand coming toward her face. She remembered time slowing down. She remembered moving, but it hadn't felt like a choice. Her body had simply acted. The door opened. Una stood quickly, expecting security guards. Instead, a tall Valkyrian female entered. She wore the dark uniform of an academy director. Her scales were a deep green color and her eyes were sharp and intelligent. Unlike Velnath, she wore no mask, showing her face openly. "Sit," the female said. It wasn't harsh, just a command from someone used to being obeyed. Una sat. The director took the chair at the small desk and turned it to face her. For a long moment, they studied each other in silence. "I am Director Calren," the female finally said. "I oversee this entire academy. Every instructor, every cadet, every training program." She pulled out a small holographic projector and set it on the desk. "Do you know why I'm here personally instead of sending a subordinate?" "No, ma'am." Calren activated the projector. The air filled with images. The classroom, Velnath, Una. The director played the incident from multiple camera angles. She slowed it down, frame by frame. Una watched herself catch Velnath's wrist, watched her other hand shoot forward, watched the mask break and fall. 0.17 seconds, Calren said. "That's how long your response took. From the moment Velnath's hand began moving until you caught his wrist. 0.17 seconds. She looked at Una. "Our fastest Valkyrian warriors average 0.31 seconds for a similar defensive motion. Our best time ever recorded is 0.23 seconds, and that was by a champion who trained his entire life specifically for speed." Una said nothing. What could she say? "We've been studying humanity since first contact," Calren continued. She pulled up more holograms, charts, graphs, data streams. Physical capabilities, reflexes, endurance, strength. Your species is impressive for your size and evolutionary age. Your high-gravity homeworld created denser bones and stronger muscles. Your persistence hunting heritage gave you incredible endurance. But we thought we understood your limits. She zoomed in on the footage, focusing on Una's face. "We didn't account for this. We didn't understand your adrenaline response." "My what?" "Adrenaline. A hormone your body produces during stress or danger." Calren switched to a medical scan. "When threatened, your human body floods itself with chemicals that change how you function. Your heart rate increases, your blood pressure rises, your muscles receive more oxygen. But more than that, your perception changes. Your brain processes information faster. Your reaction time drops dramatically. For a short period, you become something beyond your normal capabilities." Una remembered the way time had seemed to slow down. "How much faster?" "We're still analyzing the data, but preliminary estimates suggest your reaction time was 40 to 50% faster than your normal baseline." Calren leaned back. "Do you understand what this means? When humans are threatened, when you face danger, you don't just fight harder. You literally become faster, stronger, more capable. Your species has a biological combat enhancement built into your basic physiology. But all species must have something similar, right? Survival instincts? Not like this." The director shook her head. "Most species, including Valkyrians, perform worse under extreme stress. Fear makes us slower, makes our movements less precise. We train for years to stay calm under pressure, specifically because stress degrades our performance." She gestured to the frozen image of Una catching Velnath's strike. "You're the opposite. Stress makes you better." Una tried to process this. Why didn't anyone notice before? Because it only activates during real perceived threats. Training exercises, even hard ones, don't trigger it fully. You need to believe you're in actual danger. Calren's voice softened slightly. "Velnath created that situation when he struck you. Your body recognized the threat and responded accordingly. So what happens now?" Una asked. "Am I expelled?" "That depends on the tribunal." Calren stood and moved to the window. "Velnath is demanding your expulsion in criminal prosecution. He claims you assaulted him. Many instructors support him, but the recording shows he struck first, and coalition law is clear. Cadets have the right to defend themselves." "Will anyone believe that a human could defend themselves against a Valkyrian instructor?" Calren smiled, showing her sharp teeth. "They will now." She turned back to Una. The tribunal is scheduled for tomorrow. Get some rest. You're going to need it. The next day, Yuna was escorted to the tribunal chamber. It was a large circular room with seats rising in tiers around a central floor. The tribunal council sat at an elevated platform. 3 senior military officers from different species. The room was packed with observers. All the human cadets sat together on one side. Most Velcarian instructors sat on the other. Velnath stood when Yuna entered. He wore a new mask, plain and simple, lacking the decorations of his former one. The humiliation of that loss showed in his rigid posture. The tribunal began. Velnath spoke first, describing Yuna's insubordination and disrespect. He claimed she had been hostile from the start of training, that she refused to accept discipline, that her attack was premeditated. She waited for an opportunity to embarrass me, he insisted. She deliberately provoked me so she could claim self-defense. Then Yuna was allowed to speak. She described the 3 months of excessive training, Minji's broken ribs, the dismissed complaint, the constant humiliation. She kept her voice steady, factual, refusing to let emotion cloud her testimony. I didn't want this to happen, she concluded. I just wanted to train to serve, to prove that humans could be good coalition soldiers. But Instructor Velnath struck me. My body reacted. I didn't plan it. I didn't even think about it. It just happened. Other cadets testified. Jiho described the hostile training environment. Hyun presented medical records showing the unusual number of injuries human cadets had sustained compared to others. Minji, still moving carefully because of her ribs, explained how the Velcarians had continued attacking after the simulation objective was complete. Then Taemin stood to testify. The Velcarian student's words carried weight because he had no obvious reason to support the humans. I've been watching the human cadets carefully, he said. Not because I dislike them, but because I was curious. They learn fast. They adapt. They don't give up. He pulled up his own analysis on a holographic display. I've reviewed training records for the past 3 months. Instructor Velnath has violated protocols 47 times specifically with human cadets. He pushed them harder than safety regulations allow. He ignored injury reports. He created hostile training environments deliberately. The tribunal council members looked at each other. The senior Thaxian officer spoke first. Why would an instructor do this? Because he wanted them to fail, Taemin answered. He wanted to prove humans were weak and unstable. Instead, he proved we've been underestimating them. The tribunal reviewed the classroom footage again. They watched in real time, then slowed it down, then frame by frame. They measured response times and compared them to Velcarian standards. They analyzed Yuna's grip strength when she caught Velnath's wrist. Director Calren provided the medical data about human adrenaline response. She explained how the threat had triggered Yuna's enhanced reflexes. She showed comparative studies of human and Velcarian combat performance under stress. The deliberation took 3 hours. Yuna sat in silence, surrounded by her fellow human cadets. Minji held her hand. Jiho sat stiff and ready, as if preparing for a fight. Hyun looked like he might be sick. Finally, the tribunal reconvened. The senior Corellian officer, a being whose body glowed with internal light, spoke in a voice like crystal chimes. We have reviewed all evidence and testimony. Our findings are as follows. The entire room held its breath. Instructor Velnath did initiate physical contact with Cadet Yuna. This violates Coalition military code regarding cadet discipline. Cadet Yuna's response was defensive in nature and within her rights under Coalition law. Relief flooded through Yuna, but the officer wasn't finished. Furthermore, we find evidence of systematic mistreatment of human cadets under Instructor Velnath's supervision. This is unacceptable and will be addressed. The Corellian's gaze turned to Velnath. Instructor Velnath, you are hereby removed from your position and demoted 2 ranks. You will undergo retraining in proper cadet instruction methods before being allowed to teach again. Velnath stood rigid, his humiliation complete. His career, built over 60 years, was shattered. Cadet Yuna, the Thaxian officer said, you are cleared of all charges. However, you will undergo additional testing to better understand your species' combat capabilities. This information will be valuable to the Coalition. The tribunal ended. Yuna was free. The human cadets surrounded her, laughing and crying with relief. Even Jiho showed emotion, his usual blank expression cracking into something like a smile. But as they left the chamber, Yuna saw the looks from other species. Everything happened in less than 3 seconds, but Yuna would remember every detail for the rest of her life. Velnath stood in front of her desk, his body radiating rage. The crest on his head had turned deep crimson, a color Yuna had learned meant extreme anger in Velcarians. His breathing came fast and harsh through his ceremonial mask. "You dare speak to me that way?" His voice was deadly quiet. "You dare suggest that your primitive species has anything to teach the Coalition?" Yuna said nothing. Her hands were clenched at her sides. She could feel her heart hammering against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to back down, to apologize, to make this situation safer. But she couldn't. She wouldn't. Behind Velnath, the other students watched with wide eyes. Jiho was half out of his seat, his body coiled and ready. Hyun looked terrified. Taemin, the Velcarian student, leaned forward with interest. "Your arrogance is offensive," Velnath continued. "Your entire species is offensive. You come to this academy with no understanding of honor, no discipline, no respect for those who came before you." His clawed hand raised. "Someone needs to teach you your place." In Velcarian culture, an open-handed strike to the face was a formal challenge. It was how superiors disciplined subordinates who stepped out of line. It was meant to be humiliating, painful but not permanently damaging. A lesson in respect. Velnath's hand swept toward Yuna's face. He was fast. Incredibly fast. His species had reflexes that evolution had sharpened over millions of years. He had trained for 60 years as a warrior. His strike moved like lightning, precise and controlled. The claws retracted just enough to hurt without tearing flesh. It should have been impossible to stop. But something happened to Yuna in that moment. Something she didn't understand. Something that came from deep in her human biology, from millions of years of her own species' evolution. Time seemed to slow down. She could see Velnath's hand moving toward her face. She could see every scale on his arm, every detail of his ornate sleeve. Her brain processed information faster than it ever had before. Threat, danger, fight or flight. Her body flooded with adrenaline, and the world turned crystal clear. Her hand moved without conscious thought. It shot up and caught Velnath's wrist in mid-strike. The classroom gasped as one. Velnath's eyes widened behind his mask. He tried to pull back, but Yuna's grip was iron. She couldn't have explained how she was holding him. Her muscles shouldn't have been strong enough. But they were. Then her other hand moved just as fast, just as instinctive. She didn't strike his face. She didn't hit him at all. Her hand shot forward and grabbed the ceremonial mask, the symbol of his rank and authority. Her fingers found purchase on the ornate metal and crystal. She pulled. The mask was designed to withstand combat. The clasps were made of advanced alloys. They could survive weapons fire and explosive decompression. But they weren't designed for the kind of force that human muscles could generate when adrenaline turned a normal person into something beyond normal. The clasps shattered. The mask broke in her grip, pieces falling to the floor with musical chiming sounds, and Velnath's face was suddenly exposed to the classroom. He staggered backward, gasping. His hand went to his face, covering it instinctively. In Velcarian culture, to have another person forcibly remove your mask was the deepest humiliation possible. It was a violation of honor that could destroy a career. It said you were unworthy of your rank, unworthy of respect. Yuna stood there, breathing hard, the broken pieces of mask still in her hands. She stared at what she'd done, her mind catching up with her body's actions. Shock hit her like cold water. What had she just done? The silence in the classroom was absolute. 60 students held their breath. Time seemed frozen. Even Velnath seemed unable to move, his exposed face showing scales that flushed with shame and rage. Then Jiho was on his feet, moving to stand beside Yuna. Hyun followed a heartbeat later. Within seconds, all 12 human cadets had formed a wall around her, their bodies tense and ready. "You struck a cadet first," Yuna said, her voice shaking but clear. "I defended myself." Velnath's voice came out as a strangled rasp without his mask's filters. His throat wasn't adapted to breathe station air directly for long periods. You dare. This is an act of violence against an instructor. This is assault. You will be expelled. You will face criminal charges. You struck her first," Jiho interrupted, his voice flat and cold. "We all saw it. Every camera in this room recorded it. I was disciplining an insubordinate student. Velnath's exposed face showed fury beyond anything Yuna had seen before. "That is my right as an instructor." "Not according to coalition law," Taman said. All eyes turned to the Valkyrian student. He stood slowly, his movements careful. Coalition Military Code, Section 7, Article 12. Physical punishment of cadets is prohibited except in self-defense situations. What you did was assault. What she did was defend herself. Other Valkyrian students shifted uncomfortably. A few nodded. The lines were being drawn in the classroom, and they weren't falling along species boundaries the way everyone expected. Velnath looked around the room, seeing his authority crumbling. He grabbed a spare breathing cloth from his belt and covered his face roughly. His hands shook with rage and humiliation. "Security," he spoke into his comm unit. "I need a security team in Classroom 7 immediately. A student has assaulted an instructor." "This is wrong," Minji said from her seat, still recovering from her broken ribs. Her voice was quiet but carried in the silent room. "This is all wrong. We came here to train, to serve, to prove that humans deserve to be part of the coalition. But all you've done is hurt us, humiliate us, try to break us." She stood up carefully. "Maybe the problem isn't that we're too weak. Maybe the problem is that you can't handle the fact that we're strong in ways you don't understand." The security team arrived within minutes, 4 large Valkyrian guards in combat armor. They looked at the scene, Velnath with his face covered, the broken mask on the floor, the human cadets standing together in a defensive formation, and the rest of the class watching with uncertain expressions. "Detain that cadet," Velnath ordered, pointing at Yuna. "She assaulted me. She broke my mask. Wait." The lead security officer held up his hand. He was older, with scars crossing his scales. His nameplate read Commander Resh. "Let me see the recording first." He accessed the classroom security footage through his wrist computer. His eyes moved back and forth as he watched. Yuna saw his expression change from neutral to thoughtful, to something that might have been surprise. "Sir," Commander Resh said carefully, "the recording shows you struck first. It also shows—" He paused, replaying something. "It shows the cadet's response time was 0.17 seconds. Sir, that's faster than any Valkyrian on record." "Impossible," Velnath snapped. "Human reflexes are slow. Their bodies are weak. She must have anticipated—" "She didn't anticipate. She reacted." Resh looked at Yuna with new eyes. "I've been training soldiers for 30 years. I've never seen anyone move that fast." He turned back to Velnath. "I'm going to have to detain her as per protocol, but I'm also filing an incident report that includes the full recording. Director Calran will need to review this." Yuna felt hands on her arms, but the security guards were surprisingly gentle. They placed restraints on her wrists, more procedure than actual restriction. "It's going to be okay," Jiho said quietly. "We'll all testify. They can't ignore what happened." "I'm sorry," Yuna said to her fellow humans. "I'm sorry I put you all at risk." "You have nothing to apologize for," Hyun replied. "You stood up. For yourself. For all of us. That took courage." As they led her out of the classroom, Yuna looked back one last time. Velnath stood among the pieces of his broken mask, his career and honor shattered on the floor beside it. The other students watched her go with expressions ranging from hostility to something that might have been respect. And Taman, the Valkyrian who had spoken up, nodded once. A small gesture of acknowledgement. Whatever came next, Yuna knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. Not for her. Not for the other human cadets. Not for the entire academy. She had broken more than just a mask. She had broken the illusion that humans were weak, and the galaxy was about to find out what that really meant. The space station was massive. Yuna pressed her hand against the window and stared at the stars beyond. She had been on the Valkyrian Stellar Academy for 3 months now, and she still couldn't believe she was really here, far from Earth, far from home, floating in a metal city among the stars. Still looking at the view, Minji walked into their shared room and dropped onto her bed with a tired sigh. "You know we have physical training in 20 minutes, right?" Yuna turned away from the window. "I know. I just needed a moment." Minji sat up and stretched her sore muscles. Her face showed fresh bruises from yesterday's combat drill. "Another moment to remember why we volunteered for this torture?" Something like that. Yuna grabbed her training uniform from the small locker. The fabric was made by the Valkyrians, designed to withstand extreme temperatures and impacts. It fit her body perfectly, but it still felt strange. Everything here felt strange. The two women changed quickly and headed to the training hall. The corridors were filled with aliens. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others crawled on multiple limbs. A few floated past using advanced technology Yuna didn't understand. They were all different species from different worlds across the galaxy, all training to become soldiers for the Galactic Coalition. "There's Jiho," Minji said, pointing ahead. The tall man stood near the training hall entrance, his face blank as always. He barely spoke to anyone, even his fellow humans, but Yuna had seen him fight. He moved like a shadow, precise and deadly. Hyun joined them a moment later, looking worried as usual. "Did you hear? Instructor Velnath is leading our session today." Yuna felt her stomach tighten. Velnath, the Velkarian commander who seemed to hate humans more than anyone else on the station. His people, the Velkarians, had ruled the coalition military for centuries. They were reptilian, covered in tough scales with sharp claws and incredible speed. They were proud warriors who viewed combat as sacred, and they viewed humans as weak. "Of course he is," Minji muttered. "Why would we get an easy day?" The training hall was enormous. The ceiling stretched 50 meters above them, and the floor could change its surface with technology. One moment it was solid metal. The next, it could become a swamp or a rocky mountain. Today it looked like a flat arena. Velnath stood in the center, his tall reptilian body covered in ceremonial armor. His face was hidden behind an ornate breathing mask made of dark metal and crystal. The mask was decorated with symbols that showed his rank and victories. Velkarian instructors never removed their masks in public. It was a sign of honor and authority. "Line up." His voice came through the mask's speakers, harsh and commanding. The students formed rows. There were over 60 cadets in this training group. Most were Velkarians. Some were Thaxians, a species with blue skin and 4 arms. A few were Corellians, beings made of living crystal. And then there were the 12 humans. Only 12 humans in the entire academy. Velnath walked slowly along the rows, his clawed feet clicking on the floor. He stopped in front of each human student, his masked face studying them with clear disgust. "Humans," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The newest species in the coalition. Barely 15 years since first contact. Barely out of your own solar system." He paused. "And yet you think you belong here, training alongside warriors whose people have fought in the stars for thousands of years." None of the humans spoke. They had learned that talking back only made things worse. "Today we will test your combat abilities," Velnath continued. "You will face opponents from other species. Let us see if your soft bodies can handle real combat." The first few matches were brutal. Velkarian students fought with controlled aggression, their speed and strength overwhelming most opponents. When human cadets stepped into the arena, the results were predictable. They fought hard, but they lost. The Velkarians were simply too fast, too strong, too experienced. Jiho lasted longer than the others. He moved with trained precision, using techniques from Earth's special forces. But in the end, his Velkarian opponent's speed was too much. Jiho hit the ground hard and the match ended. Then it was Yuna's turn. Her opponent was a young Velkarian male named Kale. He was shorter than most of his kind, but his eyes showed confidence. He thought this would be easy. The match began. Kale moved fast, his claws striking toward Yuna's face. She dodged barely. His tail whipped around, trying to knock her legs out. She jumped. Her heart pounded in her chest. Everything seemed to move so fast, but something felt different. As Kale attacked again, Yuna's body responded without thinking. Her hand caught his wrist. Her leg swept his balance. For just a moment, she had the advantage. Then Kale's strength overpowered her. He threw her across the arena. She hit the ground and rolled, gasping for breath. The match was over. "Pathetic," Velnath announced. "This is what humans bring to the coalition. Slow reflexes, weak bodies, no instinct for combat." He looked directly at Yuna as she stood up. "Your species survived on Earth by luck. Here in the real galaxy, luck means nothing." Yuna felt anger burning in her chest, but she said nothing. She returned to her place in line, ignoring Minji's concerned look. The training continued for 2 more hours. Velnath pushed the human cadets harder than any others. He made them run extra laps. He made them repeat exercises until their muscles screamed. And through it all, he reminded them that they were inferior. When the session finally ended, Yuna's body ached everywhere. She walked back to her room in silence, Minji beside her. Jiho and Hyun followed a few steps behind. 3 more months, Minji said quietly. 3 more months until we finish basic training. If we survive that long, Hyun added. Yuna stopped walking and turned to face them. We'll survive, we have to. We're not just representing ourselves here. We're representing all of humanity. Every human who dreams of traveling the stars. Every person on Earth who believes we belong out here. Jiho, who rarely spoke, nodded once. She's right. We don't quit. That night, Yuna lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling. Her body hurt. Her pride hurt worse. But she thought about Velnath's words. About how he viewed humans as weak and unworthy. He was wrong. She didn't know how she knew it, but she was certain. Humans had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They had climbed from caves to spacecraft. They had looked at the impossible and made it real. Velnath would learn that lesson eventually. They all would. Outside her window, the stars continued their eternal dance, uncaring about the struggles of one young woman on a space station. But somewhere in those stars was Earth, was home. And Yuna carried that home with her in her heart, in her determination. She would prove that humans belonged here, no matter what it took. The alarm screamed through the station at 0500 hours. Yuna jerked awake, her heart racing before her mind fully understood where she was. Training. Another day of training. Beside her, Minji groaned and rolled out of bed. I hate mornings. I hate space mornings even more. They dressed quickly and joined the other cadets in the dining hall. The food was nutritious but bland, designed to meet the needs of dozens of different species. Yuna ate without tasting, her mind already preparing for whatever Velnath had planned. The past 3 months had been harder than anything she'd experienced on Earth. Every day brought new challenges, new pain, new humiliation. The Valkyrian instructors pushed all cadets hard, but they pushed humans harder. They wanted them to break. They wanted to prove that Earth's newest species didn't belong among the stars. Today's the zero-gravity combat simulation, Jiho said quietly as he sat down with his tray. I saw the schedule. Hyun's face went pale. Already? We've only had 2 training sessions in 0G. That's the point, Minji said bitterly. They want us to fail. The simulation took place in a massive spherical chamber where gravity could be turned off. Inside, obstacles floated at different heights, creating a complex 3-dimensional battlefield. It was disorienting and difficult, nothing like the combat humans had evolved for on solid ground. Velnath divided them into teams. Yuna's squad included all 12 human cadets. Their opponents were 12 Valkyrian students, all experienced in zero-gravity combat. The objective was simple. Capture the opposing team's beacon while defending your own. This will be educational, Velnath announced through his mask. For all of you. Humans will learn their limitations. The rest will learn why humanity cannot lead in coalition military operations. The chamber door sealed behind them. Gravity switched off. Yuna's stomach lurched as her feet left the ground. She grabbed a handhold and oriented herself toward the center of the sphere. Stay together, Jiho ordered. Don't let them separate us. But the Valkyrians moved through zero gravity like they were born to it. They used their tails for propulsion, their claws to grip and change direction instantly. Within seconds, they had scattered the human formation. Yuna found herself spinning through empty air, struggling to control her movement. A Valkyrian student shot toward her, moving with predatory grace. She tried to dodge, but in zero gravity. Every action created an equal reaction. She spun helplessly. The Valkyrian's shoulder slammed into her ribs. Pain exploded through her chest. She caromed off a floating obstacle, gasping for air. Around her, the other humans were faring no better. The Valkyrians were faster, more coordinated, more brutal than necessary for a training exercise. This wasn't about teaching. This was about domination. Yuna saw Minji try to defend their beacon. 3 Valkyrians converged on her. Minji fought hard, but she was overwhelmed. One of them struck her with his tail, the powerful appendage moving like a whip. The crack was audible even through the helmets. Minji's cry of pain filled the comm channel. She curled around her ribs, drifting helplessly. Medical halt, Hyun shouted. She's injured. But the Valkyrians didn't stop. They captured the beacon and continued pressing their attack, claiming they hadn't heard the call. The simulation ended with a complete Valkyrian victory, and Minji floating unconscious in the chamber. Hyun examined her once they restored gravity and got her out. Broken ribs, maybe 3 of them. She needs proper medical treatment. Velnath showed no concern. Combat has risks. She should have defended better. That wasn't combat, Una said, her voice shaking with controlled anger. That was assault. They kept hitting after the objective was complete. The instructor's masked face turned toward her. Are you questioning my assessment, cadet? I'm questioning why you allow unnecessary violence against human students while calling it training. File a formal complaint if you disagree, Velnath said dismissively. Until then, return to your duties. Una filed the complaint that afternoon. She documented everything: the excessive force, the ignored medical halt, the pattern of violence specifically targeting human cadets. She submitted it through proper channels and waited. 3 days later, she received the response. Her complaint had been reviewed and dismissed. The reviewing officer, another Valkyrian commander, stated that appropriate training intensity was necessary to prepare cadets for real combat situations. The human cadets simply needed to adapt to coalition standards. Minji spent a week in medical bay. When she returned, her movements were careful, guarded. The light in her eyes had dimmed. I'm fine, she insisted when Una asked. But she wasn't fine. None of them were. That's when the tactical theory classes began. These were supposed to be easier than physical training. Just cadets sitting in a classroom, learning strategy and command decisions. But Velnath taught this class too, and he had his own methods of torture. He would present impossible scenarios, situations where every choice led to death and loss. Then he would demand answers from each student, picking apart their reasoning, exposing their doubts. Today's scenario was particularly cruel. A civilian transport ship carrying 5,000 people was under attack by pirates. A coalition warship could save them, but doing so would mean abandoning a strategic position. Losing that position would allow enemy forces to strike a military base, potentially causing even more casualties in the long run. Save the civilians, or protect the military objective. Choose who lives and who dies. The Valkyrian students answered with cold logic. Military objectives were primary. Civilians understood the risks of living near conflict zones. The base must be defended. The Thaxian students argued for splitting forces, trying to accomplish both objectives with divided strength. Velnath dismissed this as wishful thinking that would result in failure on both fronts. Then he came to the human cadets. Hyun suggested calling for reinforcements. Velnath told him reinforcements wouldn't arrive in time. Jiho proposed a fighting retreat, saving the civilians while conducting a tactical withdrawal. Velnath said that would result in unacceptable casualties to the military forces. Then Velnath's masked face turned to Una. And what about you, cadet? What is your answer to this impossible situation? Una had been thinking while the others spoke. Her mind had been working on the problem from every angle, the way her father had taught her to solve puzzles as a child. Look for what others miss. Find the hidden option. The scenario has a flaw, she said carefully. You said the pirates are attacking the civilian ship. Pirates want cargo, not deaths. They're likely not trying to destroy the ship, just disable it. She leaned forward. The coalition warship could execute a micro-jump, a very short, faster-than-light jump that would take them to the civilian ship in seconds. They could drive off the pirates quickly, since pirates usually flee from military vessels. Then they could jump back to their original position. Total time away from the strategic location, less than 10 minutes. The room went quiet. Several alien students looked at each other, considering the idea. Taman, a Valkyrian student Una had noticed watching the humans carefully, nodded slightly. Velnath's voice came cold through his mask. Micro-jumps are dangerous. They require precise calculations. The risk of error is high. But it's possible, Una pressed. The scenario didn't say we couldn't use advanced maneuvers. You asked what I would do. That's my answer. Humans always think they're clever. Velnath's words dripped with contempt. He stepped closer to Una's desk. This is exactly why your species will never lead in the coalition. You cannot accept hard truths. You always look for the easy way. You cannot make the necessary sacrifices that command requires. Una felt something snap inside her. 3 months of abuse. 3 months of watching her friends hurt. 3 months of being told humans were inferior. It was too much. Maybe that's exactly why we're still around, she said, her voice steady despite the anger burning in her chest. Humans survived barely a century of space travel to reach the same level as species who had 3,000 years. Maybe it's because we don't accept impossible situations. Maybe it's because we find the solutions others can't see. The silence in the classroom was absolute. Every student stared at Yuna. No one talked back to instructors. Especially not to Velnath. The Velkarian commander's whole body went rigid. His scaled hands clenched into fists. Through his mask, she could hear his breathing change, faster and harsher. "Stand up," he ordered. Yuna stood, her heart pounding. She'd gone too far. She knew it. But she couldn't take the words back now. Velnath moved toward her, and Yuna prepared for whatever came next. Not contempt now, something else, calculation, assessment, fear perhaps. The G2 weeks after the tribunal, everything changed. Yuna was in the training hall when the alarms started, not the normal training alarms. These were different, long, wailing sounds that meant real danger. Emergency lights flashed red throughout the station. "All cadets report to your assembly points immediately." Director Calren's voice came over the speakers. "This is not a drill." "Repeat, this is not a drill." The human cadets ran through the corridors alongside dozens of other species. Fear showed on every face. Whatever was happening, it was serious. They assembled in the main hangar where ships waited. Director Calren stood on a raised platform, her expression grave. "The Krell swarm has broken through our defensive lines," she announced. The entire hangar went silent. "They've destroyed 3 coalition outposts and are pushing toward core worlds. Every available soldier is being mobilized. That includes all combat cadets." Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Combat cadets were never deployed before completing their full training. This had to be desperate. "You will be assigned to coalition ships as support personnel," Calren continued. "Your training is incomplete, but you're all we have. Board your assigned vessels, follow orders, and may the stars watch over you." Yuna found herself assigned to the ISS Dauntless, a coalition cruiser with a crew of 300. She boarded with her squad, Jiho, Minji, Hyun, and 8 other human cadets. They were joined by 40 cadet soldiers from other species, including Taman. The Velkarian student nodded to Yuna as they entered the ship. "Looks like we're on the same side for real now." "Looks like it," Yuna replied. The Dauntless departed the academy within the hour. Through the viewports, Yuna watched dozens of other ships launching. The entire coalition fleet was moving to face the Krell threat. During the journey, the human cadets learned more about their enemy. The Krell were insectoid creatures who lived in massive hive ships. They had no concept of individual identity, only the collective consciousness of the swarm. They fought with overwhelming numbers and suicidal aggression, throwing themselves at enemies in waves until nothing remained. "They don't negotiate," the Dauntless captain explained during a briefing. He was a Thaxian named Velkros, with 4 arms and bright blue skin. "They don't retreat. They either win or die trying. Our usual tactics don't work against them. They have no honor to appeal to, no fear to exploit, just hunger and expansion." "How do you fight something like that?" Hyun asked quietly. "We're still learning," Captain Velkros admitted. "That's why we're losing." The battle zone was chaos. Yuna had never seen so many ships in one place. Coalition vessels of every size and design formed defensive formations around a colony world. In the distance, the Krell ships approached like a dark cloud, organic-looking vessels that seemed to grow rather than being built. "All personnel to combat stations," the ship's announcement echoed. "Enemy contact in 10 minutes. The human cadets were assigned to security teams. Their job was to defend the ship's interior if the Krell managed to board. It was considered the safest assignment for untested cadets, but nothing about this battle was safe. The Krell hit the coalition lines like a tidal wave. Their ships didn't follow formation tactics. They just charged forward, firing primitive but effective weapons, ramming coalition vessels when they got close enough. The fleet's carefully planned defenses crumbled within minutes. "Multiple breaches," the security chief shouted. "They're boarding us." "All security teams to your positions." Yuna's team rushed to Corridor 7 where a breach had been reported. They arrived to find the wall torn open, cold space visible beyond a shimmering emergency force field. And through that field, Krell warriors were pouring in. They were nightmare creatures. Each one stood nearly 2 meters tall on 4 legs. Their bodies were covered in chitinous armor, naturally grown and harder than most synthetic materials. Mandibles clicked hungrily. Compound eyes glittered with alien intelligence. They carried bioweapons, living guns that fired acid and organic explosives. The Velkarian security team ahead of Yuna's position, opened fire. Their weapons dropped several Krell, burning holes through their armor. But for every one that fell, 3 more came through the breach. The Krell didn't dodge or take cover. They just advanced, climbing over the bodies of their fallen. "Fall back," the Valkyrian team leader ordered. "We can't hold this position." But there was nowhere to fall back to. Behind them were civilian crew quarters. If the Krell got through, hundreds of people would die. Yuna saw the Valkyrian team being overwhelmed, saw claws tearing through armor, saw bioacid dissolving flesh. Her body started moving before her mind caught up. "Hold the line," she shouted to her squad. "Don't let them through." Time slowed down. Yuna felt her heart rate spike, felt the adrenaline flooding her system. The world became crystal clear. Every detail stood out with perfect clarity. She could see the patterns in how the Krell moved, could predict where they would strike. A Krell warrior charged at her. She dropped low, her combat knife finding the weak point where its leg segments joined. The creature shrieked and collapsed. Another came from the side. She rolled under its strike and drove her knife up through the softer armor of its belly. Beside her, Jaiho fought with cold precision. His training took over, every movement economical and deadly. He targeted joints and weak points, dropping Krell with surgical strikes. Hyun, the medic who'd never wanted to be a fighter, found himself fighting anyway. His knowledge of anatomy served him well. He knew where to cut, where to stab, how to bring down creatures much larger than himself. Minji, still recovering from her broken ribs, fought through the pain. She called out warnings, coordinated their defense, kept them working as a unit instead of individuals. And something remarkable happened. The other species in their squad saw how the humans fought, saw how they didn't slow down or hesitate, saw how adrenaline transformed them into something beyond their normal capabilities. Taemin, fighting beside Yuna, watched in amazement. "You're not getting tired," he said between strikes. "Valkyrians would be exhausted by now, but you're still moving at full speed." "Human endurance," Yuna panted. "Persistence hunters. We can keep going when everything else stops." The battle in Corridor 7 lasted 15 minutes. 15 minutes of pure violence and chaos. The Krell kept coming and the defenders kept fighting. Bodies piled up on both sides. The floor became slick with blood and ichor. But the line held. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found the corridor secured. 23 dead Krell lay scattered across the floor. The human cadets stood among them, covered in alien blood, weapons ready, refusing to give ground. The reinforcement team leader, a massive Corellian warrior, looked at the scene in disbelief. "How many cadets were in your squad?" 12 humans, 8 others, Yuna replied. Her voice was hoarse from shouting. 20 cadets held this corridor for 15 minutes against a Krell boarding party? The Corellian's body flashed with colors that indicated shock. That should have been impossible." "We didn't know it was impossible," Jaiho said flatly. "So we just did it." Throughout the ship, similar stories emerged. Human security teams had taken the lowest casualties while defending the most critical positions. They'd fought longer, harder, and more effectively than anyone expected. Their endurance allowed them to maintain combat effectiveness when other species were exhausted. Their adrenaline response let them react faster during close combat. Their persistence hunting heritage meant they simply didn't quit. The Battle of Krell's advance lasted 3 days. The coalition held the line, but barely. Casualties were heavy across all species. But when the battle reports were analyzed, a pattern emerged. Units with human personnel had significantly better survival rates. Captain Velcros called the human cadets to the bridge after the battle ended. His forearms hung with exhaustion, but his eyes showed respect. "I've been fighting for the coalition for 20 years, he said. "I've commanded crews from every member species, and I've never seen anything like what you did." He looked at each human face. "Your people are natural-born survivors, warriors who don't know how to quit. The coalition needs that. Needs you." Yuna looked at her friends. Jaiho, still stoic but with a hint of pride in his eyes. Minji, smiling despite her exhaustion. Hyun, who'd proven he was stronger than he thought. All of them had survived. All of them had proven themselves. "We're coalition soldiers," Yuna said simply. "That's what we do. We survive, we fight. We protect those who can't protect themselves." "No," Taemin said from where he stood with the other cadets. "You're more than that. You're what the coalition needs to survive in a hostile galaxy. You're the future." As the Dauntless limped back toward coalition space for repairs, Una stood at a viewport and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, was home. But she realized that home wasn't just a planet anymore. It was here, in this ship with these people who'd fought beside her. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, had thought them weak and soft. But they'd been wrong. And now, after seeing humans in real combat, the entire coalition would have to reconsider everything they thought they knew. The war with the Krell was far from over. But for the first time, the coalition had hope. Because now they had humans fighting alongside them. And Huma